everybody. Welcome to this special meeting of the Board of Public Works for Tuesday, August 11. Dr. Campos, do we have quorum?
Thank you, Mr. President. Fernando Campos, Executive Officer. Establishing quorum on roll call. We are joined today by Commissioner Good, Commissioner Caloza, Commissioner Garcia, Commissioner Villegas, and Commissioner Davis. Mr. President, just for clarification, all commissioners are joining in remotely at this time. We have Commissioner Good and Commissioner Caloza and Commissioner Villegas that are dialing in remotely from their City Hall offices, and we have Commissioner Garcia and Davis that are dialing in remotely from home. I myself, I am here at City Hall in Chambers, and we are also joined by our counsel, Mr. Ted Jordan. President Good, you do have a quorum at this time. Currently, we do not have any speakers under general public comment. We also have no commentary under the Neighborhood Council comments section. We do have 3 speakers on the line on item number 4 that would like to speak on that item. We also received 9 emails on item number 4 in support of the item. Those emails have been distributed to all commissioners. In addition to that, we did receive 1 Google form commentary received this morning. I can read that out loud at the time that item 4 has been considered.
Okay, so all the comments are for item 4.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. All the folks on the phone. Okay. Great. This is our initial voyage on an all Zoom Board of Public Works meeting. Hope everyone brought their patience, given that at the very least I'm a Luddite and will invariably do something wrong. So please bear with me. Good morning, folks. So that brings us, hearing no speaker cards or general public comments, let's close public comment and also close the Neighborhood Council commentary, and that'll bring us to our first item of business, which is the approval of the minutes from Friday, July 31, 2020. I will motion to approve those. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Davis. Any objections? Commissioner Villegas?
No objections, thank you.
Commissioner Caloza?
No objection.
Vice President Garcia?
No objections.
All right, hearing no objections, the minutes for July 31 are approved. That'll bring us to item number 2. Item number 2 is for all council districts, and it's a budget increase and amendment number 2 for project task order solicitation A3-1605 inflection point solutions, recommending the board authorize the director of the Bureau of Sanitation or his designee to amend the existing project TOS A3-1605 Oracle customer care and billing support with inflection point solutions. Cost ceiling will increase from $649,960 to $949,960. Our presenter today, our representative today is Alex Esparza and Nicholas Tran. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, fellow commissioners. My name is Nicholas Tran. I'm the Director of Systems for LA Sanitation and the Environment. We're asking for amendment of $200,000 to this task order solicitation. So a little background is LA Sanitation uses DWP as their billing agent. So we are we're hiring a contract with Inflection Point Solution with a subcontractor, Reese Consulting, to help us identify any issues or any data elements that we need to understand. So the subcontractor is helping us to do QA/QC and to modify or identify any changes that DWP is doing to their CC&V system on their end. So it's a collaboration between LA San and DWP to ensure that billing is accurate, and it will help reduce just fixing issues between the two departments. And the subcontractor is about 80% WEB, SPE, and EBE so far, and we'll continue to be that way. Any questions or clarification?
Just want to clarify on the maybe WIBI. They recently stopped being considered a WBE due to cost. They are now only an SBE and EBE as of the end of 2018, I believe. So we have credit for them up until that point as a WBE.
Alexa, this is Fernando Campos, Executive Officer. Can you please identify yourself for the record? We are recording this.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is Alexa Esparza.
Thank you.
And Ms. Esparza, please forgive, I got your name incorrect earlier.
Oh, that's okay. Alex is my dad. I'm not offended.
That's cool. All right, colleagues, any questions for Mr. Tran or Ms. Esparza? Vice President Garcia?
No questions, President. Thank you.
President Pro Tem Davis?
What is the term of the contract with this subcontractor or this contractor?
The current contract ends in April 2021, though we will be putting forth a request to exercise a one-year extension while we work on an amendment.
And the extensions are also for 1 year period as well?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So it's a 1 year extension on this TOS?
Yes, it goes to the end of the contract in April 2021 right now. And then, but later this year, we will be putting forth a request to exercise the 1 year extension from that. But I believe by then, this TOS will already be at its end. So it goes through, I believe, it's April 2021. I'm just trying to see what date exactly. I believe it's April 22nd.
Okay.
I don't have that in front of me, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Okay, Commissioner Villegas, do you have any questions?
I'm good, thank you.
Commissioner Closa?
Yeah, I just have a quick follow-up question from what you mentioned earlier, since they lost their WBE and SBE status. I guess can you explain that a little bit more about what happened exactly and when that was?
They still have their SBE status. Their WBE certification expired August 4th, 2018. So the percentage that we're showing here goes only up to that date. And then continuing from there, we're only counting SBE. The subcontractor decided that it was cost prohibitive for them to reapply for their certification because they're a small company. And so they're just having their SBE status only.
Does it cost money to apply for WBE?
Yes, it does. I don't know the details on what it all entails, but yeah, it does cost money for them to apply.
So they're just not applying for, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just going to say it might be worth connecting them with the BCA colleagues to understand more about what the costs are.
Yeah.
My understanding was I didn't see the certification process as cost prohibitive, but BCA would know more about that, about what that would cost. I would hate for them to not apply for something, a certification that they're qualified for. Because
Yeah, we've reached out to them to request to see if they can extend that certification. So we are communicating with them on that. Hopefully they'll get it back, but as of this report, they hadn't recertified yet.
okay, let me, feel free to reach out to me and let me know if you need help with BCA. They've always been extremely helpful, making sure people get certified and walking them through anything or explaining any other things that might be helpful, even with cost.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Mrs. Sparza, I would echo that actually. I mean, 'cause that's unfortunate. It's meaningful to have that certification. We want that. One other question, if I may, for both of y'all is, I mean, this is the second extension or amendment. I certainly get the import. We can ill afford replays of some of the challenges we've had on billing in the past, and so being very preemptively productive on that or careful on that, I think is important. That said, and I noted in your report that you that one purpose of this is also to train LA Sand staff basically in navigating the CCB. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, because I feel like that's a way to avoid continuing with more amendments.
Sure. So our database architects have been working closely with risk consulting. So in the past, they work together to understand the system and the data field and the data elements that we're getting from the CCNB system from DWP. DWP is making some modifications and some upgrades to the system. So, we anticipate there's going to be a new data, some data structure is going to change. So we're hoping that with this amendment that our staff will continue to learn and understand the database scheme that's coming from DWP. So eventually that we wouldn't really need the consultant to be on board. And part of this task as well is to help automate some of the processes between DWP and LA Sanitation because the older system require a lot of manual work. We're hoping that the new system and the upgrade will help automate and streamline a lot of the data transfer between the two departments.
Okay, that's great. And the idea here is that these folks are intimate with the system and can really help as a bridge between the two institutions, right? LA Sand and DWP.
Right. They're subject matter experts on the Oracle CCNB system, so that's why we brought them on board for us to have a greater understanding, as well as they also work with DWP to have a greater understanding on that Oracle system as well.
All right. Any other questions or objections, actually, with moving this forward? Commissioner Closa?
None, thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I just want to be clear in terms of our goal. Obviously, this is clearly a need in terms of us increasing our awareness of the systems that we're dealing with. And with the knowledge that we are acquiring through this contract, we are able to be more efficient and effective in terms of working. But what I'd like to know is our goal that perhaps in 2022 that we will have gained the skills and knowledge from this contract and the work being done by the consultants that will allow us to be self-sustaining in being able to confront doing this work as a result of what we will have been able to learn, obviously from, I guess, 3 contracts with them. Is that pretty accurate in terms of what our goal is? Do we anticipate by the additional extension that we will have that our staff will have grasped the necessary skills for us to continue to work in this project, knowing and understanding that we are capable of handling this phase of the operation? Mr. Tran, is that gold?
Yes, that is the end goal, that our staff is able to be self-sufficient and have the understanding of that CCB system. Although I would like to say that this will absolutely happen, but DWP is making changes, so we hope that with this amendment, that our staff will be able to understand, what those changes are and what are those data elements that are modified, so that we can be more self-sufficient, and that is our goal overall.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. President.
You're most welcome, sir. Commissioner Villegas, any other questions or concerns?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Vice President Garcia?
No, I'm good. Thank you, too.
Okay. Hearing no objections, do I have a motion to move this forward?
So move.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Moved by President Pro Tem Davis, seconded by Vice President Garcia. This item is approved forthwith.
Mr. President, this is Fernando Campos. Item number 2 is an increase in budget cost ceiling from $649,000 to $949,000, and it is subject to the mayor's approval for the cost containment memo. If this board would like to reconsider the motion to approve it as amended.
Yes, thank you very much. Do I have a motion to approve as amended, subject to the mayor's approval in the cost containment memo? Commissioner Davis?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
We need to re-motion it to reflect, or need to amend the motion to reflect the need for this to go to the mayor's office for cost containment approval.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. And do I have a second from Vice President Garcia?
Yes, second.
All right, so hearing no objections, Commissioner Colosa, Commissioner Villegas?
Okay.
All right, hearing no objections, this item is approved forthwith as amended and consistent with the mayor's cost containment.
Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Campos.
Thank you.
Sometimes I still forget. All right. So item number 3. This is Council District 6. And this is the authority to execute a cooperative agreement between the Los Angeles County Flood Control District and LA Sanitation and Environment to use the Strathern pit site for the implementation of the Rory Shaw Wetlands Park Project, to fund the project through the Proposition O program, and to transfer ownership of the site. Recommendations for our board: 1, approve and forward this report with its transmittals to the mayor and city council to authorize the president of the Board of Public Works or 2 members of the board and the director and general manager of LA Sanitation and Environment or designee to execute the proposed cooperative agreement, transmittal 1, between the city of Los Angeles and the LA County Flood Control District for the Roy M. Shaw Wetlands Park Project, also known as the Strathern Wetlands Park Project. I always have a hard time pronouncing Strathern. 2, notify Mr. Costa Caporis at 213-485-0586, probably going to need to read that into the record, of LA Sands Watershed Protection Division, when the agreement is ready to be executed by the board, whereupon 8 original documents will be delivered to the Secretary of the Board for execution. And 3, upon execution, request the city clerk to attest and certify the 6 original copies of the agreement. The city clerk and the board are each to retain 1 original copy and return the remaining 4 copies to the Watershed Protection Division for LA Sand. Our presenter today is the unforgettable Wing Tam. Wing, good morning.
Good morning there. Good morning, President Good and Board Commissioners and City Attorney Ted, and also Executive Officer Fernando. My name's Wing Tam, and I'm from LA Sanitation, here to give you a briefing of this agreement between LA County Flood Control District and LA City. So this agreement is basically what we call a land development agreement. Is basically providing funding to the city upon fee transfer title to the city when the project is completed. So I'll give you background a little bit about the project so you can kind of understand why we doing this way. This project's been in making for close to 15 years now. It's been a long time, involved a lot of parties from elected officials to various departments in the city. And basically this project is to develop what we formerly called Stratton Pits. It's a gravel site where it was used mainly. It's an actual pit where they take gravel and put in concrete for a lot of concrete work. And so we're basically buying this and turn it into a wetlands park. Half of the park will be a water quality flood control type of facility. The other part is going to be, the other half is for recreation and open space use. It is a 46-acre site, and this site will be able to capture a drainage area of 929 acre, and will be able to capture water close to 900 acre feet a year, which is about 292 million gallons a year. And so this particular project is able to deal with or mitigate floods, improve water quality, and once the water is accepted, it will go into the aquifer to supplement our water supply. As you know, this area is really inundated with flood every time we get a rainstorm. So this is opportunity time to work very closely with the county to put in facility to be able to alleviate some of these conditions. So this agreement basically allows the county, who will be now designing and constructing the project, and operated the project for about 18 months after constructed, to turn over to the city. And once turn over the city, we will provide $17.8 million. And this funding is actually coming from the Proposition O Fund, which was approved back in 2004. The total cost of this project is close to almost $60 million, and the county already has paid $28 million to purchase the site. So this site is now under the county control. It took them a while to basically purchase the site, about 5 years, from under corporate owners. So that's why it took so long. The schedule for completion of this project is 2027 to 2028. That's the range we're looking at right now. They're currently in design. Once it's complete, we'll work very closely with the county on developing this site. And so I'm requesting your approval to move forward with this particular agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Tam. Let's open this up for questions. Vice President Garcia.
Thank you, President. Good. One time, I know that when you briefed me a couple of weeks ago, and just remind me, what function will this project have for like the community or the folks around it? I know the internal function and kind of how we're gonna save water and stormwater, but for the outside, what's that gonna look like?
Basically, what's going to look like is going to look like a park from the outside. You can see half the park is going to have open space. It's going to have basketball courts. It's going to have soccer field. It's going to have a whole bunch of recreation activities on that site. It's a 46-acre site. So basically, you know, you're looking at over 20 some odd acres for open space community use. Wow. The other half is going to be basically water supply. So that's going to be closed to the public. So at least you have over 20 acres of open space for community use.
Thank you. That's nice, and especially in the area of Sun Valley, that's very much needed. Thank you for saying that, and I'm excited to have that.
Okay.
Thank you, Vice President Garcia. President Pro Tem Davis.
Yes, I wanted to ask about the business perspective of the project in and of itself. will we be able to achieve any inclusion in any way in terms of the project?
Since the county is designing and bidding and constructing this project, they would probably follow their protocol in terms of inclusion from small business to minority business and all that. I'm sure they have a robust system in how they hire people.
Sure.
So I don't know exactly detail how they do, but I'm sure they're very similar to the city.
Okay. And the funding that is used for this project, is it a locally funded project? And are there any federal funds also involved in the project?
Right now, as far as I know, the city is only providing $17.8 million, which is the city's clean water bond measure that was passed in 2004. So it's a resident of the city. So the city is not contributing any federal funding. Now for the county, they are providing the rest of the funding. So my understanding is that they will also be trying to get Measure W money, so basically the other bond money that we have, and also they have flood control money, because the LA County Flood Control is a district by the state, so they get allocated a certain amount of money from the state as a flood control district, so, and that district money is basically from property owner, local property owner.
And I know that we share the same values as the county when it comes to inclusion. And certainly when we look at the numbers of dollars that not only we are expending from the city perspective, but that they are expending in the county as well, I'm sure we don't need to remind them about the importance of inclusion, but it wouldn't be bad to just have a conversation to know that they will reflect the same values we do. And I'm almost sure, having been over there at one point in my life, that they share our value on that. But it's just good to make sure that we maximize the opportunity here.
Definitely. Well, I'll follow up. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, President Pro Tem Davis. Commissioner Caloza.
Thank you, President Good. I do have a few follow-up questions. And I apologize if I asked you this in the briefing wing.
No problem.
I didn't let you get away without asking you a question.
I enjoy that.
So you mentioned, to Commissioner Garcia's point, so this is going to be essentially a park, right? Or at least portions of it. Long-term, will Rec and Parks contribute to the maintenance of this long-term? Do you know? Or is that still all being...
No, definitely we've been in discussion with Rec and Park, because half this site is going to be a park facility. And so there'll be a future agreement once this project is almost constructed, probably 2-3 years before it gets constructed. We'll have to have agreement with Rec and Park in terms of what they will operate, maintain, and any open space and recreation activity or any kind of consensus or any kind of other activities will be operated by Rec and Park.
Okay, that's helpful to know. And then I heard you say that this would be completed in 2027, 2028. So this will be done by the Olympics, is what I'm hearing.
Well, I'm hoping so. I'm crossing my fingers, because this project's been in work for a long time.
Just curious. And then just a last question for me is, since this is a major project for Public Works, this is a major project for LA Sand. It's really exciting that we're going to be acquiring this new property to add to our list of parks, and also all these places that LA Sand operates. When would be the next time you would expect to see this at board? Like, at what point would LA Sand come to the board again? Just curious.
There will be 2 other agreements coming to board when the design of the project is completed, and then anticipating probably in the next couple of years going to get completed. We'll have to come to board again to have an agreement with also LA County Flood Control outline operation maintenance responsibility, because they will have flood control responsibility on the site, and then we'll have responsibility for the water quality part of it. In addition, around the same time, we'll also have another agreement with Raccoon Park in terms of how we operate the park. What is their responsibility and what sanitation responsibility. So I'm imagining this would probably be close to another 3 years before we come back to the board with another agreement. But if you like, I would glad to give you guys any time in terms of briefing for this particular project, where we are and what's been done so far and all that. It's if you are really interested and want to follow up with how the progress of this project, I would be glad to provide you that briefing in the meantime, rather than waiting so long.
Okay. Thank you, Wayne. That was really helpful. Just wanted to understand that more, since I know Commissioner Davis too had some follow-up questions about the subcontracting work at the county, just so he understands that we probably are going to see this for another 3 years. So if you want to follow up with Mr. Tam separately, that's kind of the timeline. But I don't have any other questions. This is really exciting. So thank you, Wayne.
Okay.
Commissioner Villegas.
Hi. Wing, I always see you throughout my whole career.
I know, right?
Indeed, we did put propo money into this project many moons ago. I'm glad that it's coming to fruition. And indeed, as an alternate for Deputy Mayor Barbara Romero, being on the upper LA River watershed for Measure W, we've also put money for this project. And then, working on the county side, I do remember this project as well. It's called Boreal after a LA County staff member who passed away doing work on this project. Projects like this, spreading grounds throughout Los Angeles County are large, are significant. They have a lot of sometimes contamination, and it does take long years to be able to come to clean up and to be able to come to the point we're at now. So I commend the tenacity for the city and for the county to be able to see it through at this point. So this is really pivotal. And by the time we get it back, I'm not sure that any of us will be here, but I know that, city will be getting turning over the project to us for ongoing maintenance and approval. And at that point, I guess, and this is where my question comes in. At that point, I guess, and it'll still be some time away, but it may be stipulated in the agreement, but in terms of maintenance and operation, are we going to be using any ongoing Measure W money, or has that been, thought of?
Thank you very much, Commissioner Rodriguez. Yes, I have the sentiment for you that we've been working a long time. I know you support this project, even in Prop O, you were in the committee to the county, so this is a very long time making project. So really, I really appreciate your support for this particular project. Yes, there will be Measure W money since part of this project will be funded from Measure W, so they do get qualified for Measure W funding for O&M. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
All right, wonderful. That was all. And, just for planting the seed here, we should probably also at some point look at getting Measure A money from the county as well in terms of park development and seeing what could be capitalized from that.
Okay, great, good idea. I'll follow up on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Villegas. I will just, so for my own, and I'm sure it's me, clarification, just to understand. So project most likely gets done by 2027. Then there's an 18-month optimization period, during which LA County Flood Control will be doing the O&M because they're going to be running it as an optimization. Then we assume LA San optimization for 18 months. So we'll be doing the O&M. Then, so literally we're talking realistically 2030, there is a joint agreement out there in the ether between us and County Flood over the long-term O&M that would also include us having a sort of ancillary negotiation with Rec and Parks in terms of what our part of that meta O&M agreement would be. And that O&M agreement will at least partly be supported by or certainly eligible for the Measure W funds, with presumably also those optimization periods would as well, correct?
Correct. That is correct, Commissioner Good. You summarized it beautifully. Love that.
Well briefed.
Yeah.
Well, having also had the great opportunity to have voted on this thing in its long life, when I sat on as one of the mayor's reps on the Propo AOC. It's a wonderful project. I'm really excited to see this coming to fruition, and it has been an incredible marathon for so many people involved in this work. And so I would also congratulate Commissioner Villegas, who I know has had a little spot in her head and her heart for many, many years, making sure that this project gets done. And then to you and your whole team there, including Sharon, who were the first two people to brief me on the project, I think like 7 years ago. So very cool, Wing, and really can't wait to go visit this place when it's all done. So that's actually all I have. So with that, do I have a motion to move this forward to the mayor and city council forthwith? Wait, who do I got? Okay, so Vice President Garcia, and then do I have a second? Commissioner Villegas. All right. Any objections, President Pro Tem Davis? All good?
Yes, I'm good. I'm good.
Commissioner Closa?
No objections, thank you.
All right. Hearing no objections, this item will move forward forthwith. Thank you very much, Wayne.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So that brings us to item number 4. Dr. Campos, I believe we have, well, let me read into the record what we're looking at. And this was read into the record last week, but I will read it into the record again. Item number 4 is in all council districts. And get ready, everyone, this is a marathon. Contract amendment graffiti removal contracts. Recommending the board, subject to approval of the mayor, 1, approve, subject to appropriation or transfer of funding, execution of the following 11 contracts for graffiti removal services for a term of 3 years at a not to exceed contract ceiling aggregate amount beginning in fiscal year 2021 through fiscal year 2023-24 as listed below. A, Central City Action Committee at a not to exceed amount of $3 million for graffiti removal services in council districts 1 and 13. Initial fiscal year 2021 appropriation at $725,000. B, Coalition for Responsible Community Development at a not to exceed amount of $5 million for graffiti removal services in council district 9. Initial fiscal year 2021 appropriation at $1,150,000. C, Gang Alternatives Program at a not to exceed amount of $8 million for graffiti removal services in council districts 8, 14, and 15. Initial fiscal year 2021 appropriation, $2 million. D, Hollywood Beautification Team at a not to exceed amount of $4 million for graffiti removal services in council districts 4 and 13. Initial fiscal year 2021 appropriation at $930,000. E, Koreatown Youth and Community Center at a not to exceed amount of $5 million for graffiti removal services in Council Districts 4 and 10. Initial fiscal year 2021 appropriation at $800,000. F, Los Angeles Conservation Corps at a not to exceed amount of $4 million for graffiti removal services in Council Districts 1 and 13. Initial fiscal year 2021 appropriation at $640,000. G, New Directions for Youth at a not to exceed amount of $3 million for graffiti removal services in Council Districts 2, 5, and 6. Initial fiscal year 2021 appropriation at $650,000. H, Northeast Graffiti Busters at a not to exceed amount of $5 million for graffiti removal services in Council Districts 1, 6, 7, and 14. Initial fiscal year 2021 appropriation at $1,777,000. I, Pacific Graffiti Solutions at a not to exceed amount of $3 million for graffiti removal services in Council Districts 5 and 11. Initial fiscal year 2021 appropriation at $596,000. J, Sylmar Graffiti Busters at a not to exceed amount of $2,500,000 for graffiti removal services in Council Districts 7 and 12. Initial fiscal year 2021 appropriation at $343,000. K, West Valley Alliance at a not to exceed amount of $5 million for graffiti removal services in Council Districts 3 and 12. Initial fiscal year 2021 appropriation at $1,032,000. And 2, authorize the President or 2 members of the Board of Public Works to execute the contract amendments after approval as to form has been obtained by the City Attorney. All right, folks, this item was continued from the original board meeting, from its original board meeting agenda on last Tuesday, August 4th, 2020. And our representative today is the Director of the Office of Community Beautification, Paul Roch. Good morning, Mr. Roch.
Good morning, President Good, Commissioners. Paul Roch, Director of the Office of Community Beautification. I'll try to go through quickly because I know we did do the overall briefing last week on this, but I also know Commissioner Garcia was not in attendance. So this morning, again, we are bringing forward various recommendations to approve contracts with 11 of the nonprofit community-based organizations which provide graffiti removal services throughout the city of Los Angeles. These recommendations are in response to submissions of the recent request for proposal for graffiti removal services. And again, these are the recommendations for the general geographic graffiti removal service provided by Office of Community Beautification. We'll be coming to the board at a future date with recommendations for the other 2 portions of the graffiti removal program, the placement of the strike force crews and also the specialty graffiti removal work. In total, the budget for graffiti removal this fiscal year is approximately $11.5 million. These contracts shall account for about $10.6 million of that amount, with the rest of the funds being utilized for the specialty work, for the strike force crews, and perhaps some special projects such as hiring summer youth, etc., hopefully. These contracts shall be for the period of July 2020 through June 2023. And so the amounts read off by President Good are for an aggregate ceiling limit to the contract over that period of time. OCB is recommending that all current contractors be retained and continue to provide services in the same geographic areas that they previously serviced. There were no additional bidders for this portion of the graffiti removal service. Over the past year, OCB contractors removed 27.9 million square feet of graffiti from almost 508,000 locations across the city. They responded to 141,500 requests for service, completing 68% of those requests within 1 day and 82% of the requests within 3 days. Again, all this was accomplished in a sort of crazy upside down year in which we dealt with the COVID-19 pandemic and a series of protests across the city. But all during that time, OCB contractors didn't even stop work for 1 day as they were out there continuing to provide service. So again, OCB respectfully requests approval of these contracts by the Board of Public Works. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Campos, I believe we have some callers or some public comment on this item.
Yes, we do. This is Fernando Campos, Executive Officer. Really quick, President Good, there was 9 emails that were distributed to all commissioners. We did receive 1 Google comment form that came in through our website. If it's okay with you, I'd like to read that into the record. Not all commissioners received this, so for their benefit, for those that are not here at City Hall, I'd like to read that into the record. It's from Susan Borden on item 4. It's a very short one. Covering up graffiti promptly is vital to the residents of Los Angeles. I helped my neighbors paint out graffiti in the years before the city took on the responsibility. It is far beyond the ability of residents to paint out graffiti on not only their own property, but also utility boxes, public buildings, street furniture, lampposts, and the many other places that are defaced by graffiti vandals. The Central City Action Committee graffiti program has been highly effective at keeping our streets free from graffiti. Criminal gangs use graffiti to mark their territory and send messages to rivals. When gang graffiti is left up, When gang graffiti is left up, crime goes up too. So painting out graffiti makes our neighborhood safer and more secure. This is from Susan Borden, and she is for the item number 4. Mr. President, we do have 3 callers on the line. In addition to that, we have 4 new callers that just dialed in a few minutes ago or a couple minutes ago. I'd like to give them an opportunity to raise their hand if they'd like to speak on this item. For those members that are joining us by a landline device or smartphone device, and you wish to provide public comments to the Board of Public Works, the Board of Public Works is now considering item number 4. Can you please press star 9 on your device to raise your hand for any public commentary? Again, press star 9 to raise your hand to make public comment on item number 4 at this time. Mr. President, we'll give a few seconds to those 4 callers if they would like to raise their hand. Otherwise, we do have 3 callers. I'll go ahead and dispatch those in at this time. We will start off with Mr. Tom Weisbarth.
Yeah, I'd just like to speak in support of the contracts being approved and any steps that can be taken to expedite processing through to money actually being received. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weisbarth.
Thank you, Mr. Weisbarth. We'll go to the next caller. Caller, Mr. Joseph Choi. Your line has been unmuted at this time. Mr. Joseph Choi, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm one of the program directors at New Directions for Youth that's in charge of graffiti removal. And so I really have no comment at this time. I was just listening to see what was going on with the budgets and things like that. So I do appreciate everything. And that's it on our end.
Thank you, Mr. Choi.
We'll go to the next caller, Jorge Quetzales, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your last name. Jorge Quetzales from Northeast Graffiti Busters. Please go ahead.
No, that is correct. Thank you. Hi. Yeah, that is correct. Thank you. I just want to thank the commissioners. I know you didn't have a lot of time to review these contracts, so I just want to thank you for your patience and also thank Public Works for speeding up the process. I think receiving our payment is going to be in a speedy process, going to be important. So I just want to thank everyone, and I'm calling in support for item number 4. Thank you.
Mr. Gonzalez, are you with one of the contractors?
Sorry, Jorge Quesada with Northeast Graffiti Busters.
Okay, gotcha. All right, thank you.
And Mr. President, we'll go to the last caller on the line that has raised their hand, his or her hand. I will go ahead and connect them. Caller ending in 424. Caller ending in 424. Please state your name. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak on item number 4.
Hi there. My name is Yvette Neal. I'm with Pacific Graffiti Solutions. I chimed in last week about the importance of our services and the continuation of the contract. And I just wanted to thank President and/or Commissioner Davis for his voice last week, as it was vital to, know that somebody was in support and understood the desperation that we are up against. And I just appreciate you and thank you for all of your efforts last week. And I urge the remaining council or commissioners to be in support of renewing our contracts, as we, again, have been working now a month and a half and will not see payment for at least 60 days, which is unfair to our workers to work that long without being paid. So I greatly appreciate all your efforts and thank you for all of your consideration and accepting our contracts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Neal.
Great. Last call for any other callers. If you'd like to raise your hand, press star 9 at this time. Star 9 to raise your hand. Mr. President, seeing no other speakers in the queue has been cleared out.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Campos. Let's open this conversation up to the board. I'd like to start off with Vice President Garcia.
Thank you, President Good. I don't have many questions. I fully understand where we're at this one. And I do apologize I was not here last week. And thank you for letting me be part of today's discussion. I'm not understanding and why one of our callers, I'm sorry I didn't get the agency correct, that we will not have a payment for 60 days from now. Maybe Paul or Fernando can answer that, what the process is like.
Well, I mean, the payments typically, are always a little bit behind for the month of July, just because it's the beginning of the fiscal year. It takes a while to get the funds into the contracts, the new fiscal year funds. I don't believe that it's going to be 60 days. I mean, typically, right now, we're only about, a week behind our regular schedule. I mean, they would not be submitting their invoices for the month of July until July was over, so around August the 1st. So as long as we're able to get board approval, get the contract signed and through the process and encumber the funds, we might be, we will be a little bit later in making payment, but I anticipate it'll be maybe just about 2.5 weeks later than typical.
Okay, so it's not, thank you for that explanation, Paul.
And that would be very similar to my explanation as well, Fernando Campos, Executive Officer. The services that are provided in July are not billed until August, so typically within the first or second week of August. Once those invoices are received by the Office of Community Beautification, then that triggers our 30-day payment rule. So those payments would not be necessarily scheduled for payment until about September 15th.
Understood, perfect. Because the current contract is still in effect now, right?
There is a current contract that they are working under that extends through June of 2021. For most of our contractors, they utilized all the funding in that by the end of the fiscal year. So that covered them financially through June. So these new contracts will add the funds for the work that occurs in July and thereafter.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to say that, we still have commissioners that are going to ask questions and so forth, but I'm really excited to move forward with these contracts because graffiti is such an important piece of this, graffiti cleanup is such an important piece of our city. When there is graffiti, you notice right away. And when there is graffiti in our streets, it just makes it look completely different, or in other words, like it's not taken care of. So I really appreciate these contracts and what they're doing. One of the things that I would stress as we move forward with our contracting with all of our nonprofits, and I know our nonprofits are hearing, is that, you know, we really need to make sure that this coming cycle of contracting, we pay attention to the quality of services that we give out to the community, meaning more in the effect of making sure that if the wall is blue, we paint it blue. If it's, whatever we can do to make sure that we leave the city looking beautiful. I mean, it's only a joint effort from all public works as a city, because as more and more we're growing, overall, we just need to have a better outlook in our city and make sure. And these contractors know their communities like the back of their hand, so they know where to go and where to find the graffiti and where to take care of it right away. And so I want to make sure that that also continues. So it's important to have continuity, because they do know where to look for these type of incidents. So I'll leave that as now, and I know that my other fellow commissioners probably do have questions as well.
Thank you, Vice President Garcia. President Pro Tem Davis?
Yeah, I am pretty clear in terms of the issues we've discussed, and agree with Vice President Garcia on the issues that she just finished giving remarks on, and at the appropriate time would move the item forward.
Okay, thank you, President Pro Tem Davis. Commissioner Villegas.
Thank you, President Good. I just have a quick question for Mr. Raj. I remember last week we had some letters emailed to us indicating that they hadn't received the appropriate notice in terms of public notice for discussion of this item, and I was just wondering, did you have a chance to follow up with them or get any kind of input from them?
Unfortunately, my understanding is that the people that left comments last week did not leave any contact information. I was hopeful that I'd be able to follow up and get something more specific regarding those complaints, and maybe we'll still be able to do that. But no, I have not been able to make contact with them. I did check with the executive officer, and he said they did not leave contact information. So.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you. That was all.
Thank you, Commissioner Villegas. Commissioner Calosa.
Thank you, President Good. Thank you, Mr. Raj, for kind of summarizing the briefing again. And, again, just wanted to reiterate that it was really important, I think, to do this for the whole board, given how large this is, given Commissioner Garcia's role as the main liaison to OCD in her work on this, to really have a full board. So I really appreciate everyone's patience on this. I know that there were a lot of reasons why we wanted to wait a week. One of the reasons was also to make sure that we allowed the community to give feedback. That means all feedback, right? I think last week, we received a set of feedback where, they were, to summarize, unhappy with some of the services and the quality of services that we received. And then also, this week, with the week that we had delayed, we also received positive letters in support of, the specific contractor that we discussed last week. So I think this is all important to the process, especially since we don't get to talk about this program very often. The last time that this contract was before the Board of Public Works was with a different set of commissioners, and it was 7 years ago. And so I think that is critically important as we think about program improvement overall, and how do we think about this in a really holistic way, knowing that even though this contract on paper is 3 years, in practice, this is really, as I mentioned last week, going to be a much longer contract, more like a 6 to 7 year contract that may even be the same contracts we end up with as we move into the Olympics, as we continue to invest more funds and monies to cleaning up our neighborhood. And so just want to thank everyone again for who submitted feedback, and I'll just read them here since we did read the public comment last time. So I think that hopefully I got everybody. Everyone who submitted letters of support for CCAC were Casteller School, Chinatown Senior Citizen Service Center, Chinese Historical Society of Southern California, Kaiser Permanente, Firecracker Run Committee, Fong Lun Benevolent Association, and then Susan Borden, who was a public comment. And so I just wanted to put that out there also for a complete public record, because we are, as a board, I think always trying to make sure that we have, consistency. Since we're hearing now 2 sets of feedback here that we now really need to take and discuss in today's meeting about not even just this particular contractor, but like how do we make sure that we have, the best path forward to make this into an even more robust program, knowing how critical it is and how important it is to so many people in the community. So I guess before I asked Mr. Roch a few follow-up questions, I would like to hear actually from our city attorney, Mr. Jordan. I know one of the items that we had requested last week was for him to meet with Mr. Roch and kind of look at the contract itself. Is this anything need to be strengthened? Is there more that we can do here? I would like to get his feedback and analysis on that.
Certainly, yes. I met with Paul the same day as the meeting. I've gone through the whole contract, and I know there were some concerns expressed based on some of the feedback that we were getting with some potential performance issues. I've gone through the contract, and I believe the contract does provide all of the adequate protections that the city would want to have in a contract at this time. Certain provisions that we may have in other contracts aren't here. For example, specific liquidated damages provisions, but those are usually more in construction contracts or other things like that, not contracts with nonprofit, community-based organizations that are providing sort of a service like this. The contract does provide that should there be some performance issues, that the city can withhold some or all of the payments. That's something that is available to the city. We can, of course, terminate the contract for our convenience, as can the contractors. But that's often not a remedy that we want to go for, because then it leaves us without anyone. The contract does indicate that we can that we can place the contractors on a corrective action plan. These provisions aren't really defined in the contract, which I think is a good thing, because it gives us the flexibility to act strongly when strong action is necessary, to act more gently when more gentle action is necessary, and to really tailor what we do based on the problems that we're perceiving or hearing about. I did talk to Paul about making maybe one clarifying change in the contract, and I can say it into the record here. The contract clearly provides the city with a unilateral ability to adjust a payment if there's been a performance issue. That clarity is muddied a little bit in section 303A of the contract, where it reiterates the city's ability to act unilaterally, but then indicates that, or as set forth by a written amendment. Amendments to the contract are things that we do collaboratively with the contractor. Everybody signs. It's not the kind of unilateral action the city would be taking in a performance issue. So my recommendation would be at the end of section 303A to simply strike out the language that reads as set forth by a written amendment. Again, I don't really think it makes a change to the contract and what we intended. It just clarifies that the contract really does mean what we intended, which is the city can unilaterally adjust compensation when there's been a performance issue. Something I expect to be invoked very rarely, because I think generally we work with contractors to solve these problems. There's another area which I'm not really sure if this is something that is possible, but I did note in the contract, again, speaking to some of the issues that we heard about last week about quality of the work. In section 202M, M as in Mary, of the contract, it does indicate that the contractors are already provided smartphones, apparently by the city. So one thought I had, it's not an original thought, let me just convey it to the board. The idea came elsewhere. Was that, is it feasible or possible to request the contractors to document the work that they do using those smartphones that the city has provided to them? A simple before and after picture, I think would do wonders later when there's a question of, well, who did that work? What color paint did you use and all of that? So I don't necessarily think we have to amend the contract to achieve that. It could be simply something that the city requires of the contractors, because we do require them to document their work. We can bake it into the contract or not, but it is something that I believe we can ask the contractors to do, even with the language that's in the contract. Lastly, there is a section in the contract, 205H, H is in Harry, which provides a mechanism for our administration of the contract in the form of written monitoring reports where community issues can be documented with the contractor, corrective action plans can be presented to the contractor. And so to the extent we have some issues that may come up in the future, I would urge staff as part of its oversight of the contract to take advantage of that section to provide the contractor with the feedback that will help them do a better job. The bottom line is the contract provides sufficient protections for the city. I would recommend that one technical change in 303A, and then perhaps request the contractors to better document the work they're doing with a photograph before and after. And perhaps also utilize the tool we have under 205H, these monitoring reports, and develop corrective action plans that are tailored to each specific contractor whenever an issue arises.
Okay.
I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have.
That was really helpful. Thank you, Mr. Jordan, for meeting with Mr. Roch on this and kind of giving us your legal analysis on the contract and your thoughts on it. If I can just ask Mr. Roch some follow-up questions to Mr. Jordan's point about, instances where, and it happened last week, it's happened before in the past, but how does OCB investigate claims where we're getting feedback from the community about our contractors' work? And what is that process, since that happened last week?
So yeah, when we do get calls or questions or comments, whether they come via email or a response to a closed request, because when somebody submits a request for service through MyLA 311, if they do leave their email, then they get an email follow-up saying that the request has been completed. When we do get a complaint about the service, whatever that complaint might be, we have different coordinators that oversee the different OCB contractors. They will typically go out into the field and visually inspect the location in question to determine whether, the graffiti has not been removed, or whether it's been removed and maybe the wall got re-tagged, or if a poor color match was used, if they painted something that they should not have painted, all those types of things. We go out into the field, we visually inspect the work, we follow up with the contractors. The contractors will are very quick to send out a follow-up crew and then document the work, either if they had to fix it or whether it looks appropriate or whatever the case may be. Certainly quality of the work is very important to OCB and to our contractors. There are a lot of cases where, there might be a tag on the wall, and before our contractors got out there, somebody else may have come and just slapped some paint over it, and so the work looks shoddy, maybe didn't match or something, and then obviously it's our contractors that are judged by that work, even though they may or may not have performed it. But they are quick to respond when we follow up with them, and they always kind of close the loop and let us know, what the outcome was.
Okay. Thank you for kind of walking us through that process. That's really helpful to know. I bring that up because, again, it did happen last week. Mr. Jordan, we heard, just mentioned a provision of the contract with the city providing smartphones to our contractors. And what I didn't hear from the process that you just outlined was actually how we utilize the technology that's built into the contract and how we utilize the Taggers graffiti tracking database, which is a photo-based application. So that's the part where I'm missing, or I didn't hear that from the process. And I think an area that I would like to propose strengthening to the board for a number of reasons. One, I think that in the instance of last week, there was confusion about who did that work, right? Was it the contractor? Was it GSD? Was it the library? It's a common occurrence. It's happened before in the past. And I think that requiring the before and after photo, as Mr. Jordan suggested, protects not only the city, it protects the contractors, and it allows us to show the community the quality of our work. And I think also most importantly right now, in a time of COVID, it also protects OCB staff who are doing this monitoring work. It allows them to do monitoring from home about the quality of work and the performance of our contractors in a much more holistic way that doesn't require them to be driving around the city by knowing exactly all the different times that this graffiti has been abated or not. So that's actually a section that I would like to propose an amendment to. The other section that I thought that would be really good to strengthen, and I say this because this is going to be the last time for my colleagues, again, that we're going to have the opportunity to really strengthen this program. And the next time this comes to board again, we won't be here. And how this is administered, we also, in my opinion, would want to strengthen the contract and bake it in there in ways that allows us to see more frequently what's happening on the ground. And also to see ways in which maybe we need to reallocate resources because they're doing too much work for whatever they're getting funding from. So I think this is all helpful and should be part of the conversation. It's in the contracts in section 303, where it says modification, that I actually wanted to propose an amendment. And I'll read it here out loud for the record. It says here, the city, and this is the third sentence in this paragraph, it says, the city shall review the contractor's performance on a periodic basis. In the event the city determines that the contractor is not meeting its proposed performance standards, the city may unilaterally reduce the compensation set forth herein upon written notice to the contractor. And I do agree with Mr. Jordan's amendment to strike the last half of that sentence. And so the part here that I actually want to strengthen is the part where it says periodic basis. I actually would like to see this happen on a yearly basis, be reported to the Board of Public Works so that we can see by contractor what the performance looks like on an annual basis. I love the numbers that we get for this program because it's so exciting to hear about all the graffiti removed, all the trash pickup, but we actually don't know how it's performing by region. We don't know how the performance looks like by council district. And so I think for my colleagues, it's really, I think, what would be helpful in terms of us understanding how we can best look at this and really strengthen it moving forward. So those are actually the two proposals I would make. And then actually there's one here that I highlighted this morning, which is also, and I can repeat this for Mr. Raj and Dr. Campos if it's helpful, but it's actually in section 205, services to be provided by the Office of Community Beautification. It's section I. It says here that OCB will encourage contractor to make purchases from MBE/WBE vendors and monitor that good faith efforts are made. So knowing how large this contract is, and I also had Mr. Raj and Mr. Valito help put together all the different contract amendments that our contractors get, not just from OCB, but from other bureaus and council offices. And, you know, over the course of 6-7 years, it's a lot of money in terms of the services that they're providing to us, which is great. But I also want to make sure that we include, for the subcontracting efforts here, that we make sure to be inclusive of the SBEs, DBE, and I guess EBE. Let me know, Dr. Campos, if there's any other ones that I'm missing here. But so I just wanted to strengthen that piece since only 2 of the certifications were mentioned. So those were really the 3 areas that I wanted to strengthen in the contract, taking into account last week's feedback, the support letters we got over the weekend, and really, again, how do we just put this program into place that we feel good about by the end of the Garcetti administration. You know, did we do everything we could to strengthen this and to make it be as successful as possible? So hopefully that has come across in terms of like what my goals were in terms of proposing these amendments. I'm going to go ahead and pause there and see if my colleagues had anything else that they wanted to comment on or ask, but yeah.
Well, Mr. President.
Yeah, go ahead, President Pro Tem Davis. You're frozen, it looks like, Mike.
It does appear to be that way for Dr. Davis. Dr. Davis, your internet is frozen at this time. We'll give it maybe a couple seconds to see if it catches up to us. Quick clarification.
Meanwhile, I'll come back to you, Mike. Vice President Garcia.
Thank you, President Good. The only thing I want to, thank you, Commissioner Calosa, for your comments and for going through the contract in detail, and also having Ted going and kind of get more specific on the contract. I like the amendment that you brought up where it talks about utilizing their smartphone device and attaching it to that database. Paul, is that something that the contractors can do?
Yeah. Not only can they do it, they do it
Okay.
in a lot of instances. Now, the trade-off always is to take a photo and upload it into the database, and while you're waiting for that to happen, you know, it takes a little time, you know, 2 to 3 minutes until it uploads and you can move on to the next one. So, you know, if they were to do that for every single instance of graffiti, you know, and most crews are out there, you know, remove maybe, you know, 40 to 50 locations on a daily basis. If they were to have to take a photo of each one and then upload it into the system or bring it back to the office and have someone upload it in for every case, you know, you're looking at an extra maybe 2 hours of work that rather than someone being out in the field providing graffiti removal, you know, they're uploading photos. That being said, our contractors have all, they work with LAPD. They've been trained by LAPD on what graffiti has investigative value to the police department and which ones They do like to get before and after photos taken of, and so those ones our contractors do take photos of, as well as some other just general locations. If they know it's a hot spot or there was a complaint or something like that, we always ask our our contractors to give us photos. I think photos are obviously a great help, but it's that trade-off, between how much time they spend removing graffiti as they do uploading photos. And maybe we'll continue to work with ITA and see if there's any way to speed up that process. We have been working with ITA to make the system so that contractors are able now, in a lot of cases, to close cases right when they're out in the field, as opposed to bringing those locations back at the end of the day. ITA has developed an app, so as soon as they provide the work and complete a location, it's closed out in the system rather than at the end of the day.
So ITA has an app that your contractors have been using? Is that what I'm hearing?
ITA has developed an app. All of our contractors, but not every crew for the contractors utilizes that app because it's a licensing issue, and each license does cost some money. But this was just developed within probably the last 6 months, so we've been testing it out on a pilot case. It's working out very well, allowing our contractors to close the requests out in the field. So we do anticipate continuing to expand that to additional abatement crews and allowing them to do that. They can upload photos directly from the field using that app also. But again, it kind of all depends on, the signal they have in that particular area. I hate to have a contractor sitting there and waiting, 10 minutes or something like that for the photos to upload, as opposed to doing, more graffiti abatement.
I understand. Maybe what we can do is, I understand that sometimes, our graffiti contractors remove small graffiti, tags from streetlight posts or from traffic control posts, whatever it is. So maybe we can give an example of what we want them to actually load and unload. I take it that something for like a one tag is probably not worth it, but maybe for those big ones or those medium ones that are very visual to the outside, maybe those are the ones that we look into doing that.
Right. Yes. And as part of the MyLA 311 system, residents who report graffiti can submit photos of that graffiti as well. And so that allows us to, if the contractor puts in the after photo, the before photo is already in there so we can look at it. Or in case, somebody complains about something not being done, and if they've submitted a photo, then we can go out and judge whether it's the same graffiti or whether the contractor did paint out the particular wall and somebody just tagged it up again.
Right. Okay. I don't have any more. I don't know if my colleagues do.
Commissioner Villegas? Any additional?
I don't have questions. I really liked what Commissioner Calosa brought up. If her comments were a motion, or if we're going to be able to summarize those, I would be willing to second them. I really appreciate just coming back to the board just to listen on a yearly basis of either like progress or abilities to change anything or nuances that maybe occur. It'd be like good to be able to hear something like that. But I don't have any additional questions. Thank you so much.
And do we have President Pro Tem Davis back or no?
I do not see him back on the line. Quick clarification, President.
Good. I can maybe take up some of our time right now.
Can you summarize the proposed contract amendments?
Well, I would like to. I think we may need to get some assistance from Commissioner Caloza on the amendments. I mean, I made one, which was removing that phrase at the end of section 303A. Commissioner Caloza, I think, was proposing that we make an additional amendment to section 303A to strike out where it says a periodic and replace that with an annual, so that that review occurs annually. I would point out that that becomes a contractual obligation of the city, but it's a good thing for us to be doing on an annual basis. However, we don't want to limit ourselves to only doing that review on an annual basis. Depending on the circumstances, there may be a review we want to do more frequently than an annual basis. So I might suggest, instead of simply replacing periodic with annual, to say that we'll do this review on a periodic basis and then add not less than annually, so that we can do that periodic thing as often as we want, monthly if necessary, bi-monthly, etc., as the conditions dictate, but in no event less than annual. So I would maybe, as a friendly suggestion, in that paragraph, add not less than annually, following the word periodic basis.
I would agree with that, Mr. Jordan, and I also wanted to add it in here specifically that the board would get that opportunity to see what that looks like, since we are the ones who award the contract and ultimately are responsible for the program.
I think that's a good idea. I often try to distinguish between what the board does administratively with its bureaus, or in this case with OCB, versus what we're baking into the contract, which defines the relationship between us and our contractor. The board taking up this item on an annual basis to hear the review of the contractors, that's something that the board can and indeed probably should do. However, it doesn't need to be put into our contract. You can, usually we try to put the things in the contract that need to be in the contract and then handle other items sort of, administratively. You don't hear other bureaus with their contracts, even though they do bring you annual reviews, that those annual summaries or reports, updates, status things aren't typically baked into the contract. So I think
Ms. Dr. Campos, this is a note for our annual oral reports to add OCB annual review to that list. So it would be baked into the contract for not less than an annual review for the contract, and then for the purposes of the board hearing what that looks like, it would be as an oral report. Does that make sense, Dr. Campos?
It does, Fernando Campos. We can definitely add that to our oral reports. Currently, the Office of Community Beautifications provides quarterly reports to this board, so you may actually get that information earlier than once a year, but at least once a year we can note it into the oral reports that we have to present that information in accordance to this contracts.
Great, and just to, and I know we do those quarterly reports, and then just to kind of, sorry to get so granular here, is that this specific report is really about the performance of the 12 individual contractors versus the quarterly reports, which we see more overall program numbers.
Right, and we can always add the performance metric, if you will, to all our report backs to the board if you'd like, but at least minimum we will provide that performance.
Okay, thank you.
Another issue that we talked about, pardon?
205I, I believe.
Well, yes, I'll get to that. I was actually going to talk about 202M, M as in Mary, the issue with the smartphones. Right now, the contract reads, contractor shall be provided smartphones by city and agrees to document instances of graffiti removal as directed by the city as part of the Taggers graffiti tracking database. So I think there may be, if I'm understanding Mr. Rock's comments, maybe a little uncertainty as to a full implementation of photographic recordation of each and every graffiti instance, while each instance may be only a minute or two here, given the vagaries of cell phone signals. When you add it up over the course of a day, it may end up having our contractors spending some significant amount of time simply uploading photographs. So it may be something we want to keep this contract provision the way it is. The city does have the ability under the existing provision to direct a contractor to do that photographic documentation. And indeed, it sounds like they do when it's more of a law enforcement purpose. It could be part of a corrective action plan that a given contractor is placed on if we're starting to hear some concerns about their particular work. But we don't necessarily need to bake it into the contract as a requirement that will be done every time. We can, as a pilot, start having all contractors do it for all graffiti, just to see if the time spent uploading does take them away from the graffiti work. But so I'm not sure if we need to amend that section right now, because it does give us the flexibility already to direct them to do it. So I put it out there for the board. And you can talk about it. Lastly, 205I relates to the purchasing of, let me scroll to it here. OCB will encourage contractor to make purchases from MBE, WBE vendors and monitor that good faith efforts are made. I think that's a fairly, I think that provision probably dates back some time, and we have lots of other categories of certification that vendors can have. So I would encourage you to update that provision to be reflective of sort of the broader spectrum of certifications that are now available. I don't have them at my fingertips, but we can certainly have them do that. It looks like Commissioner Davis is back.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
Commissioner Colosa, you're on 205I. Your only proposed amendment there was to include SBE, OBE, DVBE. I think I got them.
That's correct. Just to be more inclusive, since I thought it was strange, only MBE and WBE were spelled out.
I suspect Mr. Jordan's right. I suspect that's an old clause from back in the day. Okay. Commissioner Closer, if you have more at the moment, and I can come back to you, please let me know. Otherwise, I think President Pro Tem Davis had some comments before he was abruptly kicked off the Zoom technology.
Yes. I wasn't sure that was technology. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But what I wanted to do, I understand that our goal here is to be more effective in the performance of each of the vendors. At the same time, I think that while we do this for us as a board, when we have one agency whose performance perhaps is in question, and we have others who seem to not have those problems, I think it's important to look at the system of delivering the service so that we can move forward with that and still be accountable for all of those. I do like the provisions that we are recommending now for the entire system, but I'd love for us to look at the system because it's such a dynamic and complex problem that we still have the responsibility of continuing to deliver these services in many different ways. The other question I have for us as a board is, as we look at performance, to what degree should we have knowledge of the other agencies that also come and remove graffiti? And if we should have knowledge, then should we have some kind of response or instructions for them in terms of how they do it as well? So if in fact there are some other city departments, whatever the names of those departments are, who also go out to various areas within the city to paint over graffiti, certainly they are secondary agencies as it compares to what we're doing with these vendors who we are paying and we count on very regularly. But should we be doing something in terms of notifying these other agencies if they don't have resources for meeting the standards we have? My question to us then is, how do we deal with that? So if it's another utility agency that runs out and paints it blue, how do we deal with that?
I certainly think one answer to that would be more pictures to be able to trace the evidentiary trail. I do think, I mean, Paul, very respectfully, I wonder how frequently it takes 10 minutes for one of those photos to upload. That seems extreme, though I get that apps are complicated and all that, and it starts getting way out of my wheelhouse. I suspect that most often it wouldn't take that long. And by the way, they're going to be, presumably driving to another site, and those photos could be uploading while they're driving, not to get super into operations there. But I do think that that is one way. I want to just procedurally, let's look at this. Dr. Campos, are you in a place now where you could read, because I do think that it's important that we are timely on this, and I feel like these are well, I'd like to hear a replay or rearticulation of Commissioner Colosa's proposed amendments.
Yeah, absolutely, Fernando Campos. There are
in the form of a motion. Commissioner Colosa, if you're prepared to submit. Yeah. Okay, Dr. Campos?
Yeah, absolutely, President Good, Fernando Campos. There are 4 amendments that are being discussed by the board. The first amendment is to Section 303A to remove the following, and as set forth by written amendment, end quote. The second amendment is in Section 303A, add after the reference of review on a periodic basis, quote, not less than annually, end quote. Third amendment in consideration is in Section 205I to include SBE, OBE, DVBE for supply subcontractor purchasing opportunities. And then the fourth one, which I'm still not clear on, is Section 202M to upload before and after photos. And that is still subject by your board for consideration.
So, Commissioner Colosa, having heard from Mr. Jordan, do you have any additional comments or thoughts on 202M?
If I can really quick on 303, I think I'm sorry if I missed this, Dr. Campos, there was a amendment there that Mr. Jordan recommended to delete the last part of the sentence and delete that and as set forth by written amendment. I'm sorry if you read that already and I didn't catch it, but I just wanted to.
You got that, didn't you, Dr. Campos?
Yes, that was the first amendment on 303A to remove the following and as set forth by written amendment.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I think for the 202M piece for the taggers graffiti tracking database, and it sounds like there's also another app being developed by 311. I guess where I'm unclear is how often it's currently happening, because it's already written in the contract as is. So, while we are, trying to strive for maximum flexibility for how to administer this program, I guess, for me, I think this would also help solve a lot of problems in terms of the quality and performance that's been discussed in a number of instances. And I think, to my point earlier, this also actually allows for some process improvement with OCD staff. So they're not having to drive around looking at the graffiti if they can just look on their computer and see right from their, if they're working from home, depending on how long we're going to be in the situation, to monitor in that way. I think that from my perspective, this requirement would be consistent with other programs and our expectations of them. For instance, for city plants, we do require our contractors to take a photo of every single tree they plant. When we do sidewalk repair, we take photos of all of our sidewalk repair. And it's becoming more and more part of how the city does work, right? For a number of ways. One, again, it protects the city, it protects our contractors, and it allows us to have some visual verification of the work in instances when we do get complaints. So for me, I think that this would be a positive amendment that I would personally strongly recommend to the board to require before and after photos. That's just because I think that long term it will benefit the city. I think long term it will benefit our contractors. And so those are kind of my thoughts on that piece, and why I think it's important to make that a requirement. And so I'll just go ahead and stop there. I think I've said.
Paul, what I'd like to do, if you can give me 1 second, I'd like to hear from Paul, and then what colleagues, what I want to do is I want to open the floor to questions or comments strictly on 202M following Paul's comments.
And Mr. President, Fernando Campos, you may want to also consider and deliberate the fiscal impact to requiring the uploading of the photos before and after in terms of server and system requirements and what that cost may lead up to in the future.
Okay, well taken and received, Dr. Campos. Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, so in an ideal world, every location has a before and after photo. I absolutely agree with that. I think for a lot of different reasons. But I do know, the timeliness of uploading those, and not all of our contractors are able to upload all the photos while they're in the field. They don't all have that app at this point. We're trying to get there. It is additional funding. And how long it takes, I'm not always sure, but I know, if they come back with, 200, photos that they took at the day, and somebody has to sit there, even if it's like 2 minutes for uploading, that's an extra couple hours at the end of the day that somebody has to upload photos. But maybe better from my perspective would be to hear, I believe we do still have some of the contractors on call. I don't know if any of them would like to chime in as far as how many photos they take, how long it takes them to upload the photos, if they have any thoughts on this. I mean, if...
I'd be very open to that, Paul. Do we have, Dr. Campos, at least Mr. Weisbarth?
Yeah, we do have a couple of callers on the line. I can go ahead and just indicate if any of the contractors would like to provide any testimony in regards to uploading the photos before and after. If you can please press *9 on your device, *9 to raise your hand. We have one right now. Again, any of the contractors that are listening in at this time, if you'd like to provide any testimony to upload your experience on uploading before and after photos. Great. We have two callers at this time. Mr. President, I'll go ahead and dispatch the first one in.
Okay.
Caller ending in 424. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Hi there. Again, this is Yvette Neal. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hi, Ms. Neal.
Okay, great. So we actually do take before and after pictures of most of our color matching jobs, simply because of the reasons that were stated in last week's comment. As well, any gang graffiti, profanity, racial slurs, and anything of that nature, simply because it is also stated in our contract. As far as the time, it would be, as Paul stated, it would take a lot of time. It would take away from the actual graffiti removal on an annual basis as well as a daily basis, obviously. And we wouldn't be able to get to the request within the 24-hour period because some of them would be delayed due to the uploading of the pictures. If we were to wait towards the end of the day to have the person that also closes out the 311 request, those requests alone, because the system in and of itself, the system isn't as fast as a regular, your regular system that's not outside of the city. And just closing those requests alone without pictures takes at least 1.5 minutes per request. So if we're closing just from one of my crews out there, 35 requests, it's gonna take forever to do, and I don't see it to be feasible. Just on that base alone, again, the most important graffiti out there, color matching, I could totally see it. Profanity, racial slurs, especially, everything that happened over the riot. We did take pictures of all of that graffiti. If we're ever, assisting in an investigation, we're told what to do, what locations to take pictures of. So we are working with community organizations, the police department and OCD to assist in anything that they need. As far as, going to court to prosecute, we work with Jerry Valito. He asks for pictures. We record all of the tags that are removed. So there is sufficient evidence and or recording of everything that's removed out there on a daily basis. And thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Neal.
Thank you. And just for the record, can you please state your name again and which company?
Pacific Graffiti Solutions, Yvette Neal.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
We'll go on to the next caller, contractor Tom Weisbarth. I'm going to go ahead and unmute Mr. Weisbarth.
Yes. Solmar Graffiti Busters. Up in Solmar, cell service, quite frankly, is very poor with the phones that we've been issued. There are a number of areas where we simply don't get a signal, and there are other areas where uploading is very spotty. The system doesn't easily say, just send these later. It asks you to send them. We actually photograph everything we do, but we do it with a low-cost digital camera, and we archive them. So we have photographs, but uploading them into either taggers or I would say worse yet, would be into the city system is an excruciatingly painful process, and simply would bog us down dramatically. Aside, like I say, from some areas, we just don't have a signal. So this would not be a very friendly situation. We have the photographs. If anybody would like the photographs, we take several thousand photographs a month, and if it's only 30 seconds each, that's 1,000 minutes, and it's not going to be 30 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weisbarth. So, colleagues,
President Good, can I ask something to either of the contractors on the line?
Yeah, of course.
I just want to ask, so obviously this is something that's important to us, that we get some kind of pictures and that the database goes through and the app and so forth. What will work for you guys? What seems to be feasible so that we can both be comfortable with the contract?
Again, Yvette Neal, Pacific Graffiti Solutions. As Tom stated, we do take pictures. However, to upload them in the system, for them to be at your access when requested is, at your fingertips, I should say, is more difficult than us continuing to take pictures that we're already taking. And then if there's a specific location, going into our system and simply emailing you those pictures. So there is a way to do it, and we've been doing it, just, to make it more common across the board, I think is what you're requesting, that everybody do it. I know that not all contractors take a picture of every location. Again, Tom stated that they do. We, however, take pictures of that which is important to the police department, things that are being investigated, and anything that is a high priority, such as slander, again, gang graffiti, political slander, that of that nature. So it's possible, but just not, I don't see it being uploaded in the system on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Would it be possible that by the end of the week they all get uploaded? We're just trying to find a way that we're all comfortable with making sure that things get documented for you, for the purpose of your work and ours as well. with
That is
something-
another, sorry.
No, that's what I was gonna say. I'm just thinking, like, for example, we have, and you know, I get that they're much bigger department. For example, sanitation. When they go out and do their homeless encampment cleanups, they do their cleanups, and then at the end of the day, they allocate an hour to kind of do the reporting of it. So they go back to the office and they do paperwork. Would that be something that can be implemented somehow? And I'm not saying to change your workload or anything like that. I'm just trying to get through the conversation of making sure it gets well documented, your work.
Again, we do actually document all of our work towards the end of the day or the end of the week, and that process alone takes time going into the system per request. To close out one request, as I stated earlier, it takes about 1.5 minutes, and sometimes 2 minutes when the system is very slow. So that would actually add to our overhead, needing possibly more time, another person on staff to do that. So it would increase the contracting cost. So, and then two, depending on
That's what I thought.
what the system, you know, can hold, okay, depending on what, how many megabytes or gigabytes or whatever that is, we may not even be able to hold all those pictures. So again, it just depends on the system, how much, you know, if you're willing to upgrade our contract, add another person just to upload pictures. Because again, even if we're uploading the pictures that we take, they're going to have an address attached to them, which will take that much longer, or create a completely different file each day per location. So it's going to take a little bit to understand. Of course, it's doable, but at what cost? Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are, Tom.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Tom from Somar Graffiti Busters. One of the issues would be marrying the photograph up to the item in the 311 system. So if we were to upload them later, you know, you're going to end up at the end of the day with 75 pictures. You're going to have to figure out which ones are married to which items that you've entered. And frankly, we don't enter them every day. We enter them periodically. So you would have to remarry the photographs to the item, and that's going to be a time-consuming process. You know, again, we have the photographs, and we can provide a disk of photographs. And if you want to see a specific spot, you know it was done on a specific day. You go and look at that day. That's the way we do it.
Thank you, Mr. Weisbart.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
real quick. Vice President Garcia, are you good?
Yes, I am, President Good.
Okay. President Pro Tem Davis, yes.
Yeah, I was going to build on that. I think sanitation does something similar to this as it relates to documenting cleanup in alleys in terms of the technology between pictures. And obviously, they oftentimes send us a copy of the before and after pictures. What I don't know is administratively how they manage this. I don't know if Paul has a person on staff, if in fact the task could also be supported by having a person centrally located, maybe in the headquarters office with Paul, that could maybe help the vendors as a central person to achieve this task. I don't know if an additional person would be available, Mr. President, that would help with this task. I'm just thinking it's an important task if some of these potential solutions are viable in terms of looking at maybe an administrative assistant who would be with Paul, the central person that could handle all of these things, if that would be helpful. Or further, what does sanitation do? Because they use a similar system.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Davis. And I know we're obviously in a hiring freeze, so an administrative assistant would be challenging also from a cost perspective. But very well taken. Commissioner Villegas, anything you want to add on to this?
No, I am good. I know that we've had a long discussion on this. I am grateful that we've, been able to dissect it. But I don't have any additional questions, and I support the direction that we're going in.
Okay, thank you. So Commissioner Caloza, having heard that, any thoughts additional?
Yeah, one, thank you to our two contractors who stayed on the line. I think that your feedback is really invaluable, and we appreciate hearing from you directly about some of the challenges that you're having in terms of what's happening in the field and what these kinds of, what this would mean to you implementing it. I think I heard a few things that, I want to capture. I think one, it seems that, or at least from what I've observed just in the past few hearings that we've had, is that there seems to be different standards and expectations for when to take a photo and when not to take a photo. It seems that in instances for some contractors, they document it every single time. Other times it's with LAPD. So I actually would like to ask Mr. Roch a question if you have standards set for when to require photos and when not to, and how is OCB specifically implementing this requirement in the contract?
So again, just a couple of things for clarification. We're kind of talking about two different things. I think that most of our contractors take photos of everything. It's a question of what happens with those photos after they're taken, which ones get uploaded into my LA 311 system or the Tagger system so that we're easily able to go in and look at them. And those are really the ones that, we've been directed by LAPD, and the contractors have worked with their local LAPD offices as to which types of photos have investigative value, whether it's particular taggers in the area that are doing a lot of tagging, whether it's gangs, whether it's racially offensive graffiti, whatever it might be, or color matching type of things, as I think was pointed out. Those types of things are something that we want uploaded into the various databases. But every time they remove graffiti off a light pole or a sidewalk or something like that, to actually upload those photos is going to be time consuming, and I think would take away from the crews out there removing graffiti. But again, that's not to say that they don't have those photos. So down the line, if there's a case that goes to court and we need to produce documents or something like that, in those situations, I believe that our contractors do have the various photos. Even those take a while to, as was mentioned, you got to line up the particular photo with the particular address or intersection where it was taken. So.
Okay, so I think a few things after hearing that. Thank you for sharing. It might be clear to, maybe this is written down somewhere, but I actually would like to see what those standards are so that we're clear about the expectations of what gets uploaded and what doesn't. And then I think too, it'd be really helpful if we could actually, if the board can direct OCB through Mr. Roch here, to actually provide some technical assistance to our contractors to understand what will work for them, right? Because it's clear that what's here in our contract about this taggers database isn't working, and that's not feasible. So it actually would be good to understand how we can help them do their jobs better and what that would look like. I will, leave it to you, Mr. Roch, about how much time you need to do a report back to the board on that. And I guess in terms of my specific amendment for this piece, taking into consideration what we just heard here from our contractors, is I actually would like to do this I would propose wanting to do this on a pilot basis with our lowest performing contractors based off of the score that they received. And that's actually something that we haven't even, gotten a chance to talk about But for my colleagues, if you actually look at the board report, the score ranges here from 109 up to 169, which tells you the range in terms of the performance of each contractor. So I think to see what this would look like, so it doesn't implement something program-wide, is I would propose doing a one-year pilot to maybe like our, I don't know, I would like to work with Mr. Roch here on what his recommendation would be. I don't know, like the lowest 10% or lowest 15%, and do that as a pilot to see what that would look like, so that we can see what program improvements that could possibly make for those that didn't score as high as they should have been, knowing that these are the same contractors that have had this for the last 7 years. So I think that's how I would want to make my amendment for this, and hope that my colleagues support that.
If I can just, one clarification, those scores don't necessarily reflect the work of our contractors. Those are the scores that they received on their RFP. So, you know, somebody may have not written the best RFP, and so they scored lower than somebody else. That's not to say that it's a judgment of the work that they provide in the field. That's an overall evaluation average score of their RFP. So, you know, I agree with what you're saying, looking at the different contractors and trying to find a way, if we do a pilot program or something like that, whether that should be based on you know, how they scored in the RFP, I don't know.
And Mr. President, Fernando Campos, the Executive Officer here, just another item or another idea that your board should consider. Again, it goes back to the fiscal impact, whether you will explicitly add this modification to the contract about uploading the photos before and after, whether it's on a pilot or not pilot basis, the fiscal impact, and whether the system has the capacity to accept all these photos that will be uploaded to the system, and the costs that it may include to have ITA and our IT partners to modify 311 to accept all these photos. Again, I'm not sure of the system capacity or the limitations, but we do know for sure that if more photos are uploaded to the system, it will put a strain to the system. And then in order for us to debottleneck it or to even have the system operating at efficient levels, it may require additional memory, it may require additional servers, it may require additional investment. So my concern to you that I'd like your board to consider is that if this amendment were to be put on the table as is, then when it goes to the mayor's office and the CAO's office for consideration under the executive directive number 3, that may come back with some concerns, or it may delay the approval of these contracts. Again, it's speculative on my part, but I just want to put that out there for your board to consider the fiscal impacts. And I think the concept is great. Operationally, it appears that there may be some impacts, but those impacts may be mitigated based on different ideas and concepts, but at the bottom line, there may be a fiscal impact, and we just don't know what that fiscal impact is, and we don't know whether the mayor or the CAO or the city council would approve that additional cost, especially in the time of COVID-19.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
To that end, already a vendor has testified before us on this item that in fact it would also incur an additional cost to vendors. So if in fact it's true, as Dr. Campos has said, that there are some potential costs to the city, we would certainly have to also consider the additional cost to the vendor and what impact that would have, certainly one, on the contract, and then two, how much is it in fact that they would be expending to perform this task.
Yeah. So what I believe, colleagues, that I'm hearing, and Commissioner Colosa, please disagree with me. What we're talking about now is something different than the original motion to amend. And this would be, and again, this has nothing to do with the other motions or the other amendments, but to create a pilot to figure out how to do this. Mr. Jordan My gut says that creating that pilot does not necessitate an amendment to the contract, and that instead it could be a direction to OCB to report back to us in a month or something, and Commissioner Closa open conversation, report back to us in a month on a proposed pilot that would extend through the year, taking into account the fiscal implications, taking into account the practicability, taking into account, frankly, the evolving technology. While I'm sympathetic, obviously, to, and I think we've heard and get the challenges that the contractors have articulated, we also all know that to say technology could be different within the next 6 months in terms of the viability of this, of what a pilot is, would be a gross understatement. So given that sort of constellation of factors, my read is this doesn't necessitate an amendment, but in fact a direction to the OCB to come back with a pilot. Commissioner Colosa, would you accept that interpretation?
I would. Thank you for distinguishing that from the amendment and direction to give to OCB. I would.
Okay. So then what I take from this, colleagues, is we're going to go one by one. We have a motion to amend section 303A. And Dr. Campos, you want to fill in the blanks?
Yes, absolutely. So section 303A, remove the following, and as set forth by written amendment, end quote. Second amendment would be to section 303A, add after the reference of review on a periodic basis, quote, not less than annually, end quote. And section 205I to include SBE, OBE, DVBE for supply subcontractor purchasing opportunities.
Okay. Before we move this, and then Commissioner Closa will address the pilot as well. I do want to just flag something. I've certainly been listening closely. I want to restate what I think is important to consider, which is we've spent a lot of time deliberating on this, and it is merited. This is not about a particular or singular contractor. This is a $11 million contract that is one of the most important, symbolic, and actually practical programs, to your credit, Mr. Roch, and to the credit of the contractors, one of the most important programs, the most popular programs in this city. And this is a long contract. And so there are moments where our seemingly laborious deliberations are justified and important and critical to the work we do. So, I do think, President Pro Tem Davis, to your point, what we've gotten to and talked through are systemic dynamics versus anyone in particular. I do also want to flag, because I think it's important, one of our colleagues at one point alluded to workers not being paid. I'm going to assume that is hyperbole or an exaggeration, because I'm sure everyone is cognizant of the fact that that is not legal. And so I would encourage Mr. Roch to please ensure that all of our contractors are completely apprised of the law and their legal obligations, regardless of the status of contracts. And if somebody's been in business with the city for 7 years, it would be highly unreasonable to expect under any circumstance that the outcome of an RFP for a 3-year contract would turn over in hours versus weeks. So with that, do I have a motion to move the item as amended? And by the way, this will also be subject to the mayor's concurrence and cost containment memo. Do I have a motion to move the item reflective of the 2 amendments the three amendments introduced by Commissioner Calosa.
Second.
I think I've got one from Commissioner Calosa, and then a second from VP Garcia, and a second from Commissioner Villegas. President Pro Tem, any Davis, any objections, questions, epiphanies?
None.
Okay. So hearing no objections, this item is moved forthwith, subject to the mayor's concurrence under the cost containment memo and as amended 3 times by Commissioner Calosa. What I will also now do from the seat of the chair is in conjunction with, and Dr. Campos tell me where I'm getting outside the rails here, is direct Mr. Roch to report back in a month with a proposed pilot program reflective of the concerns raised around the practicability of full implementation of Section 202M. Basically, how do we get to the point where we're creating an evidentiary trail of the great work and, in some cases, rare cases, the not great work of our contractors?
And Mr.
Any objections to that direction?
Mr.
Campos, anything I need to do procedurally with that?
Mr. President, this is Fernando Campos. Really quick, is this a motion that you'd like to put on the table, or are you requesting or instructing? And there's a small nuance for me. So if you would like to put it on as a motion for consideration, then that would be added to the report. If it's just a report back, if you will, then they would just be part of your deliberation, but it would not be codified into the motion.
I appreciate that very much. Do I have a motion to establish a pilot program around photographs, et cetera? Commissioner Calosa, so moved. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Vice President Garcia and Commissioner Villegas. Any questions or concerns or objections to that, President Pro Tem Davis?
None.
All right. Hearing no objections, that motion is moved forward and approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just for clarification, also, this is subject to Executive Directive number 3, but it will be sent over to the mayor's office for his approval.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Campos, for the clarification on that. Appreciate it. Okay. Thank you to our contractors for your great work, as well as your diligence and your patience. We very much appreciate it, and thanks for being here with us. Thank you also, Mr. Roch. Thank you, colleagues. And thank you, Jennifer Pope-McDowell, for joining us. Okay, that brings us, at long last, to item number 5, colleagues. And item number 5 is all council districts, and this is a revised task order solicitation number 41, Gonzalez, Goodell Architects, and Perkins plus Will Architects, recommending the board approve the substitution of the original funding sources with the proposed funding sources and instruct the Office of Accounting to effect all required accounting actions. Our representative today on item 5.
Mr. President, item 5 has been requested by the Bureau of Engineering to be withdrawn at this time. They'd like to make some additions, some revisions to the proposed item, and they will submit that item for your consideration at a future date. So the request is to withdraw the item.
Okay. You made me read the whole thing, Fernando.
I didn't know when to interrupt you, so I took the opportunity of when you paused to jump in.
I'm giving you a hard time. You know that. No problem. All right, item number 6. Colleagues, this is for CDs 1, 2, and 14, bid rejection, sidewalk repair program package number 54, recommending the board reject all bids received for the project from the contractors on the emergency pre-qualified on-call geotechnical structural contractors list. Robert Vega is with us here today as representative from BOE. Good afternoon, Robert. Please share.
Good afternoon. Robert Vega, Program Manager for the Bureau of Engineering Sidewalk Repair Program. The Bureau is recommending the board reject all bids received Sidewalk Repair Program Package number 54 and that the project be re-advertised. This project is part of the Sidewalk Repair Program's City Facility Sidewalk Repair effort. The scope of work for this one included repairing sidewalk, constructing curb ramps, and ancillary work at 3 city facility sites in 3 council districts. The city engineer's estimate for the project was approximately $1.5 million. On December 2nd, 2019, SRP solicited bids from all 9 contractors on the emergency pre-qualified on-call geotechnical structural list. On December 17th, 3 bids were received. One from Mike Perlich and Sons Incorporated, Los Angeles Engineering Incorporated, and Joke Heavy Construction Incorporated. While waiting for complete project funding to be available in fiscal year 2021, it has been determined by the Bureau that it is in best interest of the city to reject all bids for the project and to re-advertise the project. The project will be re-advertised through the traditional bid and award process in lieu of using the emergency pre-qualified on-call list. This will provide the Bureau with the opportunity to solicit bids from a larger pool of eligible qualified contractors, to obtain better pricing from a greater number of bidders, and the ability to utilize some contractors through the Business Inclusion Program as part of the Sidewalk Repair Program. Therefore, the Bureau again recommends rejecting all bids received for Sidewalk Repair Package number 54. This concludes my report, and I am available to answer any questions you all might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Colleagues, any questions on this? President Pro Tem Davis.
I don't have any right now.
Okay. Commissioner Villegas?
I am good, thank you.
Okay. Vice President Garcia?
No questions, thank you.
All right. And Commissioner Coloso?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Robert, thank you. I think just one comment I would make, I really like the fact that this will allow for business inclusion review on this next round. So I think that's a nice outcome, a thoughtful outcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. So do I have a motion to move this item forward?
So move.
All right. Thank you, President Pro Tem Davis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Villegas. Any questions or objections, Commissioners Coloso or Vice President Garcia?
No objections.
Okay. Hearing no objections, the item is approved forthwith. So, colleagues, let's move to item number 7. Item number 7 is all council districts, and it's an authority for expenditure for alternative energy systems consulting. Recommending the Department of General Services and Office of Accounting are requesting board approval and execution of an authority for expenditure in the amount of $92,636.44, excuse me, to pay for past due invoices where services have been rendered but contract terms have expired prior to service rendering dates. Our representative is Dwight Kraft and Irene Nasaka from the Department of General Services, who have been quite patient
yes.
through the meeting. Good afternoon, y'all. Can y'all please share with us briefly what we're looking at here?
We're requesting to pay for 6 invoices that are past due because the contract expired. Normally, we send all service contracts to the Board of Public Works Office of Accounting to process, but because the contract just expired at the end of March, we were requested to prepare AFE, which has been signed off by City Attorney, and it's just waiting for your approval. And the services were provided from April to June of this year, 2020.
So, Any questions, colleagues?
I just have a clarification. It sounds like it's very administerial.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just the services were already rendered and you just have to go through this process.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask a really basic question, which is, as welcome, Ms. Masaka and Mr. Kraft, as you are to our virtual chambers. Why this feels like this is a GSD item. I'm a little confused why this is here.
I'm not sure how it's set up. Normally, when it's the PO, when we use, let's say we create a CPO, GSD account will process the payments. But we were told by the CAO, if it's a service contract, it has to go through Public Works. Only for service contracts.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, President Good, Fernando Campos, Executive Officer, typically, depending on where the originating funding source is coming from, in this case, it's the general fund. If those funds are associated with or are budgeted in a different department, but they're for the benefit of Public Works, then that department would have to come to the board for that approval to procure the items. So it all depends on how it's budgeted, where the money is, and the instructions from the CAO's office. It rarely happens, but I would probably say maybe 2 or 3% of the time. There are some funding sources in different departments. Like, for example, this board may consider a contract and allow the CAO to manage that contract, but yet the funds are here in the Department of Public Works.
So because the GSD is the contractor, because it effectively benefits BOE, that's why it's here.
They act as the purchasing agent or the supplier in this case.
Okay.
They procure on our behalf.
Okay. Any questions, Vice President Garcia?
No questions.
President Pro Tem Davis? Oh, I think you muted, Mike. Any questions?
Oh, none. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Commissioner Closa?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Villegas?
I am good, thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion to move this item forward?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Villegas, and seconded by President Pro Tem Davis. Any objections, Commissioner or Vice President Garcia?
No objections.
Commissioner Closa?
No objections, thank you.
All right. Hearing no objections, the item is approved forthwith. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Saka. Appreciate having you. And sorry to keep you so long.
No problem. Thank you so much.
All right, colleagues, that brings us to item 8. And this is also all CDs, all council districts, excuse me. And Authority for Expenditure Data Trace Information Services, LLC, Bureau of Engineering, and Office of Accounting are requesting board approval and execution of an authority for expenditure in the amount of $35,000 for Real Estate Division Annual Blanket Authority in fiscal year 2021 to pay for monthly billings for online title plant services as needed by Bureau of Engineering for access to records of deeds and ownership for the City of Los Angeles as required by Los Angeles Administrative Code Section 22.326 for the period ending in June 30, 2021. Our representative today is Mr. Uriel Jimenez. Mr. Jimenez, good morning or good afternoon.
Good afternoon and welcome, President Good.
Thank you.
Welcome to the All-Star team. It's nice to see you again.
Thank you very much. Likewise, or to hear you. It is
so.
Really good to hear you, actually,
yeah. Very good to see you, and welcome again. So, just to give you a little background about what this service is, we have 2 title officers, and the Bureau of Engineering also has one in the land development group. What we do is research title, making sure that whoever we're dealing with is the actual owner. and sometimes there's many owners, and we need many signatures for street vacations, or vacations of easements of storm drains and sewers, and dedications, and we verify ownership in those cases too, to make sure that the signatory is who it should be. And obviously for purchases, we have to understand that we deal with the owners. Sometimes there are legal matters when there's, say, accidents or trip and fall in the public right-of-way. We have to determine who the owner is. Sometimes the accidents take place on private property and sometimes in the public right-of-way. And there's research needed to understand where the accident took place and who's responsible for payment of whatever damages result from accident and things like that. And then we have to also do mapping updates. So whenever there's a track map, we have to assure that the ownership's correct. I don't know how familiar you are with Navigate LA or any of the mapping services that the Bureau of Engineering provides, but all those ownerships are verified. And what we're asking for today is for payment for access to the title plant to verify the ownerships. And this is an online service that is used by a couple of divisions in the Bureau. And that's the reason that we need this service extended and paid for. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ariel. That was really helpful. Any questions or comments, colleagues? Vice President Garcia?
I just have a basic question. Udi, is this the same amount every year?
No, it varies depending on the usage. And, you know, over the past years, it's actually changed because it used to be a physical inspection. We used to have to go to the title plant. And it's changed because it's become an online service. And it'll vary depending on our need and how much of the various different types of services we use. We'll use it depending on, say, for instance, how many title reports we have to prepare, and that'll vary depending on the workflow. So it's not a fixed amount.
Understood. But is this year higher than last year's or just about the same?
It'll be, since they switched over to the digital online service, it's been more or less the same, and it's been higher than it used to be when we used to do a lot of, you know, our city costs were higher because they had to physically go to the plants. And now, you know, in terms of the work that we do, we don't have to commute to the title plant, which was in Sylmar. And so in terms of city time, it's probably a wash, but the actual cost of the service is higher.
Understood.
But
okay.
More or less the same.
Okay. Thank you for your explanation. Appreciate it.
Sure.
President Pro Tem Davis, any questions or comments?
None on this item.
Okay, and then Commissioner Villegas?
I am well. I'm good. No question. Thank you.
Commissioner Closer?
No questions. Thank you.
All right, hearing no questions or objections.
Mr. President, if I can just ask really a quick question to Mr. Jimenez regarding the time period that this AFE is covering. My understanding is that the Bureau of Engineering subscribes to this service from March of every year through the end of February. Uri, are you familiar with this?
Yeah, that's correct.
Would you like to provide
March
an update?
1 to February 28th.
Okay. So, Mr. President, there's a proposed amendment on this item, if it's possible for your board to approve as amended, and that is to start the subscription period from March 1st, 2020 through February 28, 2021. The current AFE before you and the agenda indicates period ending June 30, 2021. So I just want to align those subscriptions to the actual AFE correctly.
Okay, will you repeat that?
Yeah, absolutely. So instead of for the period ending June 30, 2021, we would strike out ending in June 30, 2021, and replace it with from March 1st, 2020 through February 28, 2021.
I see. Does that put them in a problem with the rest of the fiscal year next year?
It basically puts them in the same position where they are this year, and that is they need to come back to this board on or by February 28, 2021 to get approval for the next set of AFEs.
Okay. Yuri, I think that makes sense, Dr. Campos. Yuri, is that, will you be prepared to do that?
Yeah, that's correct. The original date reflects the fiscal year, but now we're doing it according to the contract year.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So, colleagues, do I have a motion to move this forward as amended?
So move.
Second.
Fabulous. Thank you both. Vice President Garcia, any objections?
No objections.
Commissioner Closa, any objections?
No objections, thank you.
All right, hearing no objections, this item is moved forthwith as amended, not subject to the mayor's cost containment memo. Thank you very much, Yuri. It's great to hear you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, colleagues, that brings us to our final item. Item 9. The mayor has approved and authorized, this is all council districts. The mayor has approved and authorized the Board of Public Works on behalf of the Bureaus of Engineering and Contract Administration to execute the contractual services agreement with FSY Architects, Inc. for Architectural and Construction Administration Services for the Vision Theater Manchester Junior Arts Center. There's no representative on this. This is an administrative item. Commissioner, do we have any questions or comments?
What does the item do again? Could you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
President Pro Tem. The mayor has approved and authorized the Board of Public Works on behalf of the Bureaus of Engineering, this is communication from the mayor, Bureaus of Engineering and Contract Administration to execute the contractual services agreement with FSY Architects, Inc. for architectural and construction administration services for the Vision Theater Junior Arts Center.
Oh, wonderful. Well, if there are not any questions, I will, or at the appropriate time after questions, I will move the item.
Okay. Yeah, Vision Theater is very exciting. Any questions, Vice President Garcia?
No questions.
And for the record, President Pro Tem Davis, this is an amendment. This is an amendment for $273,609.
Okay.
And it'll be funded by CDBG and MEFLA funds. Any questions or concerns, Commissioner Coloso?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Villegas?
No questions, thank you.
All right, I have a motion from President Pro Tem Davis to move. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Any objections, Vice President Garcia?
No objections.
Commissioner Closa?
No objections, thank you.
All right. Hearing no objections, the item is moved forward forthwith. Thank you very much, colleagues. Dr. Campos, does this clear the desk?
Yes, it does.
So, thank you. With an exceedingly heavy heart, I will hand the mic over to Commissioner Villegas, who has an adjourning motion in the memory of the Streets LA warrior, Eric Taguchi, whose family is with us today.
Thank you, President James, and thank you, colleagues. Thank President Good. I'm so sorry. Habit. It's just a habit. I didn't even notice until you saw your big smile. I really botched that up. I apologize. With all due sincerity, I really appreciate being given this time to be able to acknowledge the great work and the love that Mr. Eric Taguchi shared with all of us over at Streets LA. And I would like to at least read you some assessments and observations from his career, and I really appreciate his family for joining us today. On the morning of Sunday, August 9th, 2020, Mr. Eric Taguchi, Street Services Superintendent with Streets LA, passed away after surgery complications. Eric has been serving the people of Los Angeles for close to 30 years. Eric worked in multiple divisions in the Bureau of Streets LA, Street Cleaning Division, where in addition to his normal duties, he was trainer for many of the street sweepers and equipment operators. He was promoted as a street service superintendent too in the Special Projects Division in 2012 and supported the Streets Maintenance Division in the West Valley area until 2014 when he was promoted to Street Services Superintendent 1 in the Construction Services Division until present. Mr. Taguchi contributed to the success of many programs throughout the Bureau, including the Design Build grant-funded project, Vision Zero, Failed Streets, and Measure R, and the discretionary funded programs. He also provided his technical expertise to award contracts for new cold asphalt technology. Mr. Taguchi was a person with integrity who was well liked by many of his colleagues in all divisions that he worked for. He was a person that you can rely on to get things done. He was dependable, and he will always be remembered with the smile that we were all used to seeing on his face. He was willing to provide support to anyone who asked for it and never hesitated to share his experiences, knowledge with others. He is survived by his dear wife, Eleanor, and his beloved children, daughter, Kimmy, and sons, Kenji and Ricky. Eric is a big loss to the Streets LA family and to the city family. He will be missed dearly by all. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family and friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Villegas. I would just add that the degree of sadness on the part of the Streets LA family, which was so evident and obvious, to the degree that that's a testament to how much Mr. Taguchi impacted lives and his colleagues, on top of the decades of service to Angelenos and to the city. Those are a testament to them. Those are a measure of the man. We wish you very much the best to the Taguchi family. And if anyone has anything else they want to add, please do. Otherwise, we will. This meeting is hereby adjourned. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.